If you're brave enough to hear a story they tried to bury under red clay, subscribe, follow right now, and comment Dina, so I know you're still here by this fire. Don't scroll, because this story begins with a stolen name and ends with a master begging in the dark. Come close now, children of the red clay earth. Sit by this fire that never dies. I am the old one who carries many names. The one who heard the cries cross the wide ocean in the middle passage. The one who felt hot iron on flesh before I was even born. My hair is white as cotton picked by force. My voice creaks like chains that never fully loosen. Listen now for this. Here is a true story. True the way blood remembers true, the way soil remembers. It ain't written in no white man's books. Ain't carved on no museum plaque, but it lives in the wind that still moves through cotton fields. Lives in the cry of mothers who never saw their children again. Lives in the Georgia earth that drank tears and never forgot. Her name was Dina of the Coffin, a woman locked in a wooden box for 35 nights. And the one who got buried alive in the end wasn't her. Some stories don't die when folks pass on. They root deep like sweetgrass in the lowlands, like cypress in the bayou. And this one, Lord have mercy, this one reaches straight down to the ancestors. Dina's story began the way too many began, with an eraser, with a severing, with a wound that never closed right. She was born somewhere folks argued over South Carolina, maybe Georgia. Those lines didn't mean much when your whole life got measured by how far a master's land stretched. Her mama, they say, was tall and dark as a moonless night, eyes full of secrets from across the water. Strong-backed, proud. The kind of woman who sang work songs so heavy with sorrow even the overseer had to look away for a second because his heart remembered it wasn't supposed to feel. Dina had another name once. An African name her mama whispered into her tiny ear the moment she came squalling into this world of bondage. But that name got buried the day the auction block swallowed her mama whole. Lord of Glory Charleston's son beating down like punishment. Bodies lined up like cattle. White men circling, poking and prodding, lifting lips to check teeth, squeezing arms to test strength. And the auctioneer's voice rang out like a devil's sermon, calling a woman fine, stock, and a child extra like they was nothing but numbers. Her mama didn't cry, didn't beg. She just held Dina close one last time and spoke something in that old tongue words that sounded like prayer and curse braided together. Then rough hands tore them apart. The child screamed till her throat went raw, screamed till sound became silence, screamed till her soul learned the first law of slavery: even love can be sold for silver. The man who bought her mama vanished toward the rice coast. Dina never saw her again, not in daylight. But folks swear on their lives that in the deepest hours when spirits walk, you can still hear that mama's song riding the wind, calling for the baby she lost. The girl child got sold again, this time to a man named Robert Harland. Mr. they called him, though Mr. was too gentle for what he was. He owned a plantation inland where cotton stretched so far it swallowed the horizon. The big house stood like a white tomb with columns and cruelty. Behind it, the quarters, rough cabins, dirt floors, gaps in the walls wide enough to let winter bite through. "What's this one called?" Harland asked. "Ain't got no Christian name yet," the seller said, smiling with tobacco-stained teeth. Her mama kept calling her some heathen thing. Harland looked down at the trembling child, eyes swollen from crying, body shaking like a leaf in hard wind. And he smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was the smile of a man seeing property. "We'll call her Dina," he said. Simple. Biblical. These people need Christian names if they gonna serve proper. And just like that, the name her mama gave her, the name tied to ancestors and kingdoms and stories across the water, got shoved underground deeper than any grave. Dina became Dina. But down in that place where memory lives, she carried her first name like a seed waiting for soil. The plantation swallowed her whole. She grew up in cotton and command. The fields became her classroom. The whipping post her reminder, the quarters her refuge. She learned quick how to go invisible when the master passed, how to keep her eyes down, how "yes, sir" could mean the difference between a crust of cornbread and an empty belly. But she learned other things too, whispered things the old folks didn't teach out loud. How to read signs in nature, how to know rain was coming by the way moss leaned on trees, how to slip into the hush harbor deep in the woods where folks worshipped the god of Exodus, not the god the master's preacher used like a lash. And she learned the North Star, the drinking gourd pointing toward a freedom so far away it felt like heaven. Most of all, Dina learned about rage, how it could burn slow and steady like coals under ash, waiting for the right breath of wind. By 14 summers, Dina stood tall like her mama, dark-skinned, high cheekbones eyes that looked clean through a person. The older women called her handsome girl blessing and curse both. Because in them days, beauty could be used against you like a weapon. Harland noticed. Oh, he noticed. His wife had been dead some years. Fever, they said, though folks whispered loneliness killed her faster, chained to a man cold as January ground. After she died, Harland got meaner, hungrier, started believing ownership didn't stop at labor. It reached into flesh, into the most private parts of a person. One afternoon, Dina was scrubbing the big house floor on her knees, sweat running down her back when she felt that prickling on the neck. That means eyes are on you. She looked up slow. Harland stood in the doorway with whiskey in his glass and hunger in his stare. "You sure grew up fine, Dina," he said, voice thick like syrup. "Real fine." Her heart started beating like drums in her chest. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, eyes dropping back to the floor. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." She lifted her gaze, and his smile carried that old cruelty, only now it had something darker behind it. "A man gets lonely in a house this big," he said, stepping closer. "A man needs companionship." The air turned heavy as chains. Every woman in bondage knew that tone, knew what came after, knew what kind of babies got born with light skin and haunted eyes, knew what it meant to be owned body and all. Sir Dina said carefully, "I got work to finish. Work can wait." He moved closer, floorboards creaking under his weight. "I've been watching you," Harland murmured. "You different. You got fire in you. I like that." And right there, Dina learned the last power a person can have when everything else has taken the power to say no. "Sir," she said, voice steadier as she rose to her feet. "I respectfully ask you to let me finish my work." His smile vanished. His eyes went cold. "You ask," he whispered. "You don't ask me nothing, girl. You belong to me. Every inch of you." Silence fell thick as molasses. Dina's hands trembled, but she held his stare. Held it like her mama would have wanted. Held it like dignity was the last thing she owned. "You own my body, sir," she said quiet. "But my soul is mine, and I won't give it willing." For a moment his face looked almost human, then it twisted into something ugly. "We'll see about that fire," he said. "We'll see how long it burns." That night, Dina walked back to the quarters with legs that felt like they forgot how to carry weight. The sky was red at sundown, and the old ones always said red sky meant trouble coming. Sister Ruth was waiting by the cabin door, face lined deep as dry creek beds, but eyes still bright with knowing. "He touch you?" Ruth asked. "No, ma'am," Dina whispered. "But he looked at me that way." Ruth pulled her inside voice low. "Child, when a master starts looking like that, you got 3 roads. You submit, you run, or you resist. And each road got its own kind of hell." "I can't be his," Dina said. "I won't." Ruth stared at her a long time, then reached under her mattress and pulled out a little pouch, worn leather tied with twine. Inside was dried roots, powder bits of bone. "Mojo hand," she said. "For protection. You keep it on your body. You pray over it. Ask the ancestors to cloud his mind." Dina held it and felt warmth like it carried something alive. "Will it work?" she asked. Ruth's face went solemn. "Root work ain't magic, child. It's faith mixed with knowledge, mixed with the power of our people. But even then, sometimes evil too strong. Sometimes all we can do is survive." Dina didn't sleep that night. She lay listening to the quarters breathe, snoring, coughing, the soft crying of a woman whose baby had been sold last week. Through the cracks in the wall, she could see the stars and that drinking gourd pointing north. Freedom up there somewhere so far away, it might as well have been heaven. Weeks passed. Dina kept working in the big house, kept feeling Harlan's eyes like hands that hadn't touched yet but promised to. She heard him arguing about debts, heard him cursing his dead wife, heard him drinking late into the night like liquor could drown out a guilty soul. Then came the cellar. A Saturday afternoon, late summer heat pressing down like a palm. Dina was sent to fetch preserves. She reached for a jar and heard the door close behind her. Her blood went cold. Dina Harlan said from the shadows, whiskey on his breath. "We need to talk." He crossed the space fast, slammed his palm against the shelf beside her head. Jars rattled, dust fell. "I own you," he growled, "every inch, every breath." The mojo bag burned against her chest like a coal. Dina's heart hammered, but she met his eyes. "You own my body," she said, "but my soul is mine and God's." He grabbed her chin, squeezed hard enough to bruise. "You testing me?" Then, disgusted, he shoved her. "Get out, before I do something we both regret." Dina ran up those stairs like she was running out of a grave. Ruth found her shaking on her bed and held her like a mother holds a child. "He gonna break you if he can," Ruth whispered. "Masters always try to break what resist." 3 days later, the hammering started. Behind the quarters, Isaac the carpenter, an enslaved man with hands that built what he hated, was forced to build something for Harlan. He came back with fear in his eyes. "It's a box," he whispered. "A wooden box, big enough for a person, with a lock." The quarters went silent. Nobody said Dina's name, but everyone looked at her. At night, the hammering sounded like nails driving into a coffin while the body still lived. Dina lay awake, hearing it, feeling the future being built plank by plank. On the 4th night, the hammering stopped. That silence was worse. Sunday came with the forced sermon. The white preacher talked obedient servants obeying masters, God-blessing bondage. Dina sat with her jaw clenched until her teeth ached. Harlan kept turning around to look at her. After church, he approached with Pike, the overseer beside him, whip coiled at his belt like a snake. Dina Harlan said, too pleasant, "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. They led her past the cabins to the open space behind the quarters. A crowd had gathered, folks dragged out of their little rest to witness a lesson. And there it was. The box. Rough wood. Iron lock. Half buried in red clay like the earth was already claiming it. Just looking at it made Dina's chest tighten. Her breath went shallow. Harlan raised his voice like he was preaching. "This is what happens when property forgets its place. When it refuses." Pike grabbed Dina and shoved her forward. Dina fought. Lord knows she fought, kicking, twisting, crying out. But Pike was strong, trained by violence, and she was only one body against a system. Her knees hit the edge first. Then her hands scraped rough wood as they forced her inside. It was small. So small her shoulders touched both sides. She couldn't stand, couldn't stretch, only curl. The smell hit her fresh pine and damp earth like a grave that still had sap in it. "Please," she cried. "Please." Too late, Harlan said. 35 nights, Dina. Count them. The lid came down slow, blotting out sky like a sunset she'd never see again. Then the nails. Bang, 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 each strike sealing hope. Then the lock clicked. Iron tongue into iron mouth. Footsteps retreated. The crowd dispersed. Folks forced back to their cabins and their fear. And Dina was alone. Darkness so complete she couldn't tell if her eyes were open. Her breathing sounded too loud, too fast, trapped in that small space. Panic rose like floodwater. She clawed at the lid until her nails split. She screamed until her throat turned to fire. Outside, life kept going. She could hear children laughing far off, women singing, the crack of Pike's whip, a world moving while she was buried in it. Heat turned the box into an oven by day. Sweat ran off her until she had nothing left to give. Her mouth dried like cotton. Thirst became a living beast clawing her throat. Night cooled the wood a little, but the darkness stayed heavy as soil. On the first night, she heard footsteps near the box. Soft, careful. Then a whisper through the cracks, low and urgent. "Child, you hear me?" It was Ruth. Dina croaked back, barely a sound. "I'm sliding something under," Ruth whispered. "A hollow reed. When I tap twice, you put your mouth to it. Understand?" 2 taps. Dina felt along the bottom edge until she found it thin as hope. Warm liquid came. Water mixed with something sweet honey or molasses. Just a trickle, but Lord have mercy, it was life. Little bits, Ruth breathed. "Every night I can risk it. You stay quiet. If they catch me..." She didn't finish. They both knew what happened to folks who helped the condemned. The reed became Dina's lifeline. Night after night, Ruth risked death to feed her sips of water and thin broth and bitter root medicine. Day by day, Dina learned to count time by sounds outside the morning bell, the work songs, the whip, the hush of midday heat, the settling of night. Harlan came too. Regular at first, drunk and proud. He'd kick the box and call, "You ready to submit?" Yet Dina. The first nights she couldn't answer. By the 5th night, her voice returned raw as gravel. "No, sir," he laughed. "We'll see." In the darkness, Dina's mind started to change. Fear didn't vanish, but it hardened into something else. She remembered her mama, remembered that song, remembered that her people survived ships and chains and markets and whips. "I come from survivors," she whispered. "This box ain't bigger than what they endured." And sometimes, Lord, sometimes she felt a presence. Not a sound, not a voice, a knowing. Like the ancestors were standing around that box watching to see if her spirit would break. On the 7th night, Harlan came and asked again. Dina answered different this time. "You can keep me in here till I die." "Massa," she rasped. "But my death gonna haunt you." The silence outside went thick. Harlan's voice came back uncertain for the first time. "You gone crazy in there, girl?" "Maybe," Dina said. "Or maybe I'm seeing clear." "Spirits walk here, massa. The dead are watching." After that, Harlan's visits changed. He still came, but his laughter didn't sound steady. He sounded bothered, like something had crawled under his skin. Weeks passed. Dina's body weakened. Sores rose where wood rubbed skin raw. Fever came in waves. Her muscles cramped until pain became the only language she understood. But her mind sharpened like a blade. Ruth whispered news through the reed one night. Massa been drinking heavier, waking up screaming. Pike say he seen him crying like a child. Dina smiled in the dark. Not kind, not soft. Him breaking, she whispered. Not me. And Dina began to speak into the night like her words were seeds. "You hear her, don't you?" she'd say when Harlan came. "Your wife, walking them halls. You think she died of fever. She died of knowing what kind of man you is." "You hear them," Dina breathed. "The ones you whipped to death. They still counting." Harlan would curse, would stagger back, would whisper prayers he never used to whisper. By the 3rd week, the plantation started to feel it. Folks in the quarters murmured about strange things, horses spooking at the big house, Harlan talking to shadows. Pike looking over his shoulder like a hunted man. And inside that box, Dina listened and learned. She learned Harland was getting careless. The first week, he locked the box tight every time. But as guilt and fear ate him alive, he started fumbling. One night, Dina heard the lock click wrong loose, uncertain. She tested the lid with what little strength she had. It gave, just a hair. A seed of possibility planted itself in her chest. By the fourth week, Dina changed her voice when Harland came. She stopped cursing, stopped threatening. She moaned soft and weak like she was dying. "Please," she whispered. "I can't. No more." Harland leaned in like a starving man smelling bread. "You ready to submit?" he asked, hungry. Dina waited a beat, then let the lie slide out like poison. "Yes, sir. Anything. Just let me out." He sighed, satisfied. "Few more nights. Then you'll come to the big house willing." "Yes, sir," Dina breathed. Willing. And she lay back in the darkness with that terrible smile. Let him believe. On the 30th night, Harland came drunk enough to forget his own hands. Dina heard the key drop, heard him curse, pick it up, turn it halfway, then nothing. He left it not fully locked. Dina's heart hammered so hard it hurt. But she waited, patient, the way her people had been forced to wait through centuries. When his footsteps faded, she pushed. The lid resisted. Nails held wood swollen tight, but the lock wasn't truly engaged. She pushed again. A nail popped loose with a sound like a gunshot in her ears. She froze, listening. Nobody came. Crickets sang. Wind moved through cotton. She pushed again. Another nail gave. A crack opened. Night air rushed in thick with earth and humidity and freedom. Dina gasped like a newborn. She could have forced the lid then, could have crawled out and vanished into the dark. But Dina had learned something in that coffin. Sometimes you don't just survive. Sometimes you collect what's owed. So she left the lid barely ajar and waited for the 35th night. That night the moon hung low and red as clay. Harland came singing some hymn about grace, drunk on victory, drunk on the idea of breaking a woman and calling it God's will. Dina. He slurred, kneeling beside the box. Time to come out. Time to be good. He lifted the lid, and Dina's hand shot out like a snake strike, skeletal scarred but strong with the strength of the desperate. She grabbed his wrist. Harland screamed and tried to jerk back. But Dina used his shock, his drunkenness, his unprepared body, and she pulled. He stumbled forward, hands scrambling at the edges. Dina rose at the same time, climbing out like the dead climbing from earth. In one breath, their places swapped. Harland fell into the box. "No, no, Dina, please," he cried, voice turning child small with terror. "Sorry ain't payment," Dina said and slammed the lid down. She didn't have a hammer. She didn't need one. She found a rock, found the nails scattered where Isaac once worked. Bang! Harland's scream hit the wood. Bang! Dina. "I'll free you, I'll bang." "You wanted me to die in darkness," Dina said, voice flat as judgment. "Now learn the lesson you built." She drove nail after nail, each strike shaking her ruined body, each strike a sermon the plantation would never forget. When the last nail went in, Dina scooped red clay and packed it over the top, not fully burying, just enough to muffle the sound, just enough to make him feel earth closing in. "How long," he sobbed from inside. "How long you gonna leave me?" Dina leaned close. "As long as it takes." The cabin stirred. Faces appeared in doorways. Ruth ran toward Dina, hands flying to her mouth. Solomon stood frozen, branded, cheek-twitching eyes wide with something like awe. Even Pike kept his distance, whip hanging limp at his side like it forgot what it was for. Dina stood more ghost than woman and spoke so the whole quarter could hear. "Whoever tries to dig him up will answer to me, and to the spirits that walked with me in that dark." Nobody moved, and behind them the screaming went on. until it didn't. How long it lasted, folks told different. Hours, some said. Days, others swore. But every scream ends. 3 days later, the body was found. Pike finally opened the box, and what he saw made him vomit into the red clay, face-clawed, bloody voice, torn away dead in the dark. He meant for another. White men came with badges and questions. They tried to pin it on Pike. They watched Solomon. They threatened every soul on that land. But nobody spoke Dina's name. Not one mouth gave her away. In the end, they called it an accident. Said Harland must have fallen in drunk while checking his teaching tool. The plantation got sold off to pay debts. The enslaved got scattered to other places like seeds thrown hard by a cruel hand. But the story traveled with them. Some say Dina escaped that very morning, guided north by the drinking gourd and hidden hands. Some say her body was too broken, and she stayed living half in shadow, half in spirit, to make sure no master ever forgot what a buried woman could become. Maybe the truth sits somewhere between. But here's what I know: children of the red clay earth, Dina became immortal the moment she climbed out of that coffin. Not because she lived forever in bodies returned to soil, but because she proved something the whip can't beat out and the lock can't keep in. A master can own your labor. He can bruise your flesh. He can bury you under wood and dirt, but he cannot purchase your soul. So when the world tries to put you in a box, any kind of box, remember this story. Remember Dina. Remember the lid can open from the inside. And if you want more stories, the books won't hold. Subscribe, follow, and comment Dina.